Hello there, yes, dangerously close to the weekend, and today I want to have a close look at a Spectator article and then look at the possible ramifications of what the Spectator article is suggesting. So, hey ho, let's go. Yes, well, as I said earlier this week, the Miriam Gates bill about giving parents the right to see what is being used in sex education lessons has been given its first reading in the Commons, pretty much on the nod, unlike Andrew Bridgen's bill, which failed, mainly because it's Andrew Bridgen. But this one has the backing of the Conservative Party, and I just want to go into the thinking behind this from this piece in The Spectator, and then look at events in America, which is its logical conclusion. The piece in The Spectator is from basically yesterday. Our parents have a right to know what's in sex education classes. Yes, indeed. And the rationale is this. The bill is necessary because the Conservative government has allowed sex education in many schools to be taken over by campaign groups with a radical agenda who wish to persuade children that it is wrong to think in a heteronormative way. Yes, which sounds very, very dodgy. But you'll notice the language there, okay? There is an intent by persons unknown, they're communists, but we don't know who they are, but they are definitely communists, to turn children's minds away from the good Christians' view of biblical marriage to something that's less heteronormative, one might say. That's where this piece comes from. Let's carry on. The scandals that have recently surrounded schools reveal the scale and severity of the problem. Children have in some cases been taught that there are dozens, even hundreds of different genders, and that somehow they must discern and choose their own. Some have been told that when talking or writing about historical figures they should always use they, because we don't know a past person's preferred pronouns. Muslim parents in particular have protested against their children being given age-inappropriate information about sexual practices. They insist that parents should have a right to know what their children are being told. Yes, indeed. Again, notice the language here. This is referring to a whole bunch of stories about things that never happened. But the Muslim parents in particular, yes, what they mean is there are a few people in the Muslim community who don't want their children to be taught sex education basically at all. If we don't teach sex education to children before the age of 16, we may once again see a rise in teenage pregnancies, which were a bit of a plague in the 90s and early thousands. Let's move on. We have a brave London mother, Claire Page, to thank for finally bringing the scandal to light. Page asked to see what her daughters were learning in sex education, but to her astonishment she was rebuffed by the school. She then complained to the Academy Trust which ran the school, and was briefly shown an extract on a laptop which confirmed that children were being taught a concept known as sex positivity. The Trust refused to let her see any of the lesson plans in detail. Even after Page took the matter to a tribunal, she was still denied proper access to the materials. Just to dive in there, she lost. Okay? The reason why she was still denied was because she took a legal route and lost. Let's move on. The tribunal ruled that commercial interests of the School of Sexuality Education, the company which provided teaching materials on relationships and sex education to her daughter's school, took precedence over parents' right to know what their children were being taught. This is an extraordinary development. Yes, except of course the Spectator, being a right-wing publication, is fully in favour of the government when it argues that whenever things have gone very, 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 very badly wrong about a commercial company, that we can't possibly know because it's against commercial interests. That's why you get all of these government documents that appear under Freedom of Information requests, which are essentially simply black lines of redacted material. But that's fine, but not with our precious children. Think of the children. Think of the children. The dangers of this ought to be apparent. The pressure groups on a mission to disrupt societal norms should not be allowed to provide sex education to young children. Have a think about that statement. Pressure groups on a mission to disrupt societal norms. You can see exactly where this is coming from. I would argue that certain groups in society are on a mission to disrupt societal norms. You know, those ones we've had since 1945, let's say. But they don't tend to be the groups that the Spectator is thinking of. Moving on. But the more fraught the whole subject becomes, the more eager schools are to contract out the whole business. Yes, indeed. So you problematise these things, and when schools turn to greater levels of experience, you decide that you're still unhappy with it and problematise that. Well done, lads. Teacher training has anyway become politicised, and young teachers are often themselves indoctrinated with gender ideology. Yes, absolutely, aren't they? It's not that they're introduced to concepts that they agree with through discussion, it's that they're indoctrinated. Obviously, last year Teach First announced proudly it had won a gold award in the Stonewall Workplace Equality Index. Good. You would do, wouldn't you? It's the type of thing you would announce if you were a part of their PR team. And yet, for the Spectator, it's evidence of weird forces infiltrating that don't want societal norms. Nearly there, guys. Imagine the outrage if, for instance, school children were being taught unchallenged that Brexit will bring great benefits to Britain. It would be seen as unbalanced propaganda, something the Spectator might need to think of, go away into a corner and think about, I think, if you think about that one, because thinking is one of those things that the Spectator doesn't necessarily like people doing. Yet with sex education, the ideologues, as communists, you and me, have been put in charge. It ought to be obvious that pressure groups will want to target children in order to further their own aims. Yes, that's what pressure groups do. Otherwise they wouldn't be a pressure group, would they? But this idea of targeting children, very emotive language, isn't it? Think of the children, think of the children. That is why it's so vital to keep political messaging out of schools, and why pupils who recently recalled their teacher berating them for believing in the reality of just two biological sexes were quite right to release the recordings. Yes, apart from it being, one of those things that the Spectator doesn't want, which is smartphones in schools. Political messaging in schools, incidentally. I've done videos of such things as the Protect initiatives in schools, which are very political, the British values in schools, which are very political, but the Spectator regards those things as heteronormative and therefore fine. The whole process needs to be held up to much deserved ridicule. Yes, a bit like what I'm doing at the moment. Going to move on. None of this means that children should not be taught to treat each other with respect. They should be encouraged to accept and respect everyone, whatever their race, religion or sexuality. Tolerance is at the heart of our civilization, but we should not be tolerant of dogma, which seeks to undermine reality. The government has let down a generation of children in allowing ideologues to infiltrate lessons. Backing Miriam Gates's bill to oblige schools to divulge teaching materials to parents would be a good start. Yes, indeed. Now, what we'll do, I'll show you a quick video and then we'll have a discussion about where, after that good start, we're going to end up. Sorry about taking a bit of time on that, but I think it needs unpacking. You can see exactly the ideological position. Not that the Spectator has an ideological position, of course, because only left-wingers have an ideological position. Anyway, deep breath, let's move on.
Meanwhile, another school district is divided over a book ban. This time, it's a sociology textbook for Ridge High School students in Bernards Township. A large and very vocal group of parents turned out Monday night to a Board of Education meeting, pushing back against the board's decision to block the book, which is being described by opponents as biased, unbalanced ideology. Senior correspondent Joanna Gagis was there and has the story.
I'm embarrassed of this board because disallowing the new textbook is an abuse of your power.
With all due respect, I ask you to approve this first textbook as soon as possible and put this embarrassing situation behind us.
Bernards Township has joined the list of school districts in the state where book bans have taken center stage. The school board voted in previous meetings to reject 2 new advanced level sociology textbooks recommended by their curriculum committee, not for what they contain, but what they don't.
It appears there were 2 main objections with that first textbook. First, Mr. Molinari argued something about a page or a chart that he said didn't accurately discuss the gains made by women. That one's easily overcome, as the textbook does indicate that women have made steady but slow progress.
Several community members, including parents and students, spoke at last night's board meeting, some objecting to the book bans.
The second complaint about the textbook was from Ms. Chipak, who complained that one of the studies was dated. However, we've since learned that the reason this older study is included in the textbook is that it's considered a foundational study in sociology.
Forzani referring to the first book banned. A second textbook called The Real World, An Introduction to Sociology was called trash and, quote, not worthy of our consideration by one board member, and some took issue with the way it depicted the police shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri in 2015.
Yes, well, it gives you an idea of that. It's worthwhile taking a closer look at exactly what these concerned board members' problems were with an individual textbook. The Republican Party, just the sort of background for this, have been encouraging parents to protect children by getting themselves voted onto school boards. It always amuses me, this kind of thing, because you hear about left-wingers infiltrating things and then basically abusing democratic processes, but that's exactly what's been going on in the States. So you end up with these people that are specifically at school board meetings not really particularly concerned with education, but very, very concerned with Republican politics. So let's look at some of the board members' particular criticisms of what is in essence the standard kind of 16 plus sociology textbook. Members in the majority cited several points detailing their problems with the Schrafer book. Light said she found parts of the book unbalanced, presenting issues as fact rather than subject to different viewpoints. She called the construct of the book effective, but was concerned with content. Yes. Sisbach cited several points, even by page number, detailing why she felt the book was unbalanced. She pointed to a section about lifestyles that talked about the pros and cons of marriage and family versus staying single. In other places, she said, the book talked about the man being the dominant gender in a relationship. In a section on race and religion, she pointed to references about Spanish-speaking people feeling dominated and Catholics reserving leading roles to men. Yes, indeed. And you can, if you want, argue the toss over loads of different things. I think you'd be very hard-pressed to come up with a coherent argument that the Catholic Church isn't run by men, however. I mean, just on any rational basis, why anyone would object to that. The minutiae of a phrase in a presumably it is quite, I've had to look at this online, it's quite a weighty tone textbook. Anyway, moving on. She said the book described how LGBTQ people use online resources to find partners, and she said she strongly disagreed with encouraging minors to use the internet, which she said has a dark side. I mean, just think about that. This is a person that objects to references to the internet in a school textbook in 2023. Leave that one totally hanging there. She referred to European government documents to rebut the book's citation of the number of college-educated people in Hungary. As she noted this as a question as to how updated the book is. Miss Sisbach received a university degree in Hungary. Yes, these are people that are prepared to go through a standardised textbook on a curriculum agreed nationally in the US and pick out individual things that they're not wildly keen on because it doesn't present the world as they see it. No idea here that perhaps the teacher is entirely capable of managing a discussion about pros and cons of things, like the number of degree educated people in Hungary. I don't know. I just find that kind of thing astounding, that somebody is prepared to do that and then argue that you need to reject a book. One of the other criticisms was that this is a book about sociology that mentions Karl Marx a lot. I mean, when you get down to this kind of level, I think we really are into fantasy politics. And the danger, of course, is that this stuff isn't just fantasy politics, it's desperately in the real world. And that's what The Spectator and Miriam Gates and Andrew Bridgeton and the rest of them want. They want a situation whereby they will, by proxy, simply be able to say exactly what is said to children in schools. Freedom of speech, debate, discussion, finding things out. All things that children mustn't do, lest we let the communists win. Anyway, have a nice Friday.